I still visit her grave every Tuesday. Not Sundays like normal people. Tuesdays, the day she died, the day the music stopped, the day I learned that grief is not an event but a geography you learn to navigate without a map. My mother is buried in the same cemetery where I take piano lessons now. Not my lessons. I teach them. To a 12-year-old girl named Sophie whose mother died last year. I don't charge. Some debts you pay forward, not back. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You don't know me yet. You don't know Linda. You don't know how a woman can steal your mother's grave and call it redecorating. My name is Clara. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of how my stepmother tried to bury my mother twice, and how I made sure the only name that echoed was the one she tried to erase. Welcome to Little Bunny Stories. If you're new here, this is where we tell the truth about families that smile for Christmas cards and sharpen knives for Thanksgiving. If you've ever had someone replace your memories with their furniture, if you've ever been told to move on while they were still standing on your mother's grave, subscribe. We have stories for you every week, and we read every comment. Here's my story. I was 12 when my mother died. Breast cancer, aggressive, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. She was 41. She smelled like rosewater and sheet music. She taught piano to neighborhood children for free because she believed talent shouldn't require a credit check. She had a white rose bush outside the kitchen window that she planted the day I was born. Every bloom is a year of you, she'd say, pruning carefully. When you're grown, this bush will be a forest. She died in November. The roses were dormant, bare sticks against gray sky. I stood at her funeral in a black dress that was too big. My father bought it for me to grow into, as if grief was something you'd outgrow like shoes. He stood beside me, dry-eyed, shaking hands, accepting condolences with the efficiency of a man closing a business deal. 18 months later, he married Linda. Linda was 32. Blonde, athletic, the kind of woman who looked at home in tennis whites and charity gala photos. She had 2 daughters from a previous marriage, Megan, 14, and Ashley, 11, perfect girls with perfect teeth and perfect grades. Girls who called my father daddy within a month. Girls who never cried at the dinner table. I was 13, awkward, bookish, dark-haired like my mother. I played the piano badly, I'd been learning, but after she died, my fingers forgot the notes. Linda found this amusing. Clara's so artistic. She'd say at dinner parties, the word stretched like taffy until it meant something else. So sensitive, not like my girls. My father loved her, or loved the ease of her. The way she filled the silences my mother had left behind. The way she entertained his colleagues, managed his calendar, made him feel like a man who had moved forward instead of one who had simply survived. I didn't hate her immediately. Hate requires energy, and I was exhausted. I was trying to remember my mother's voice, the exact way she said my name, the specific cadence of her laugh. I was trying to grow into that black dress. I was trying to become someone who didn't cry when she smelled rosewater in a department store, but Linda hated me, not openly. She was too smart for that. She hated me with birthday gifts 2 sizes too small. With forgetting to pick me up from school until after dark. Spurred comments to my father. She's so dramatic, isn't she? Always crying, so different from my girls. Maybe therapy, as if grief was a disorder, as if missing my mother was a character flaw she could diagnose and cure. The piano was the first thing to go. It was a Steinway upright, 1962, the color of honey in afternoon light. My mother had bought it used when she was 22 before she met my father. She taught generations of children on it. Her students' names were carved inside the bench, tiny, secret, a history of kindness. I had found my own name there once, added by a student older than me. * Clara will be better than all of us. * I came home from school on a Thursday in March. I was 17, counting days until college, until escape, until a life where no one compared me to Megan and Ashley. The house was different. Quieter. The quality of silence had changed, like a room after someone has stopped breathing. I went to the living room. The piano was gone, not moved. Gone. The space where it had stood was empty, the floor lighter where the sun hadn't reached, the walls bare where the music stand had cast a shadow for 40 years. I found Linda in the kitchen, arranging tulips in a vase. Tulips, my mother hated tulips. They don't last, she'd said. They die pretty. That's not the same as living beautifully. Where is it? I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like my mother's, the way she'd spoken when she was angry, soft, precise, dangerous. Linda didn't look up. That old thing, it was taking up space. Megan needs a desk for her college applications. Ashley wants a vanity. I sold it to a nice man from Craigslist. $800. I'll put it toward your graduation dress. I couldn't breathe. The room tilted. I saw the white rose bush through the window, dormant, bare, but still there, still fighting. And I understood in that moment that Linda wasn't just replacing my mother. She was erasing her, piece by piece, note by note, memory by memory. Who, I managed. Who bought it? Linda shrugged. Some dealer. I didn't ask his life story, Clara, it's just furniture. It wasn't furniture. It was my mother's hands, her voice, her students. The bench with my name and the promise that I'd be better. It was the last place in that house where I could still hear her. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked to my room, closed the door, and opened my laptop. I searched Craigslist for 3 days. I called piano dealers within 100 miles. I visited pawn shops. I never found it. The Steinway was gone, dispersed into the world like my mother's ashes, like her voice, like everything Linda decided didn't fit her narrative. I applied to colleges that night. 7 of them, all out of state. All with full scholarships for students who had lost parents and learned to survive anyway. I got into 4, I chose the farthest one. I packed a single suitcase and I didn't look back. I visited for Christmas. That was the rule my father made, the one compromise in our silent treaty. I would come home for the holidays. I would smile at Linda. I would pretend that the house was still mine, that my mother's ghost didn't linger in the corners where Linda's modern furniture couldn't reach. Each year, something was different. Something was asterisk less asterisk. The first year the curtains were gone. My mother's hand-embroidered linen panels, the ones she'd made while pregnant with me, replaced by something more contemporary in beige. They were stained, Linda explained. I tried to save them. The second year, the photographs. My mother's face, gradually, systematically, removed from frames and replaced. Linda and my father at a gala. Megan's graduation. Ashley's volleyball team. My mother in the attic now, in a box labeled Elena Old Photos. As if she was a phase, a previous version of the software. The third year, the rose bush. I came home on December 23rd, exhausted from finals, carrying a white rose I'd bought at the airport, a tradition, my attempt to keep something alive. I went to the kitchen window. The bush was gone, not dormant. Asterisk gone. Asterisk a patch of fresh dirt where roots had been, a blank space in the garden like a missing tooth. Linda was behind me. I smelled her perfume, something expensive and sharp, nothing like my mother's rosewater. It attracted pests, she said. Aphids, spider mites. It was diseased, Clara. I had to remove it for the health of the garden. I looked at the dirt, at the absence, at the place where my mother had planted a forest for me, and Linda had decided it was diseased. It wasn't diseased, I said. It was dormant, it would have bloomed in June, white roses, for my birthday. Well, Linda said, touching my shoulder with fingers that felt like ice. We can't plan our lives around dead women's gardens, can we? I left that night. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't come back for 3 years. My father died when I was 29. Heart attack. Sudden, alone in the house with Linda. I got the call from Megan, polite, efficient, the good daughter. Clara, it's Dad, he's gone. Linda says you should come if you want, but the funeral is already planned, cremation, his wishes. I drove 4 hours. I arrived 20 minutes after they declared time of death. The house was full of flowers, not white roses, but orchids, Linda's choice. The funeral home director was already there, a man in a dark suit who spoke to Linda like she was the widow and I was a distant cousin. I want to see him, I said. Linda stepped between me and the bedroom. He's already been prepared. It's very upsetting, Clara. Better to remember him as he was. I want to see my father. She didn't move. I've made decisions for the family. Your father wanted cremation. He told me it's in writing. I want to see the writing. Her smile tightened. After the service, when emotions aren't so high. There was no service I was invited to. I found out later, from Ashley's Instagram of all places, that they'd held a memorial at a country club. Linda in black designer dress, Megan and Ashley in matching pearls, my father's colleagues raising glasses to a wonderful man, a devoted husband, a loving father to Megan and Ashley. The obituary mentioned Linda, mentioned Megan and Ashley, mentioned his golf handicap. Did not mention my mother, did not mention me. I called the funeral home. I demanded his ashes. I was told Linda had already collected them. I called Linda, she didn't answer. I drove to the cemetery where my mother was buried, the plot they'd bought together, the plan they'd made decades ago, side by side for eternity. The grave was unchanged. My mother's stones still read, ** Elena Vasquez, beloved mother, eternal in every note. Asterisk I stood there for an hour in the rain, waiting for my father to join her, waiting for something that made sense. He never did. I found out 3 weeks later. Linda had bought a new plot, a premium section in a cemetery across town where the grass was greener and the stones were polished weekly. She'd had my father cremated and buried there in an urn beneath a black marble slab. The inscription, asterisk Robert Vasquez, beloved husband, devoted father of Megan and Ashley Morrison, asterisk she'd given him her maiden name. In death she'd claimed him completely. I went to the cemetery, I found the stone. I stood before it and I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was in a place beyond grief, a landscape I'd never seen on any map. A place where your father dies and becomes someone else's father, where your mother is a footnote, where you are not even a memory. I touched the stone. It was cold. New. The ground still soft from recent burial. She took your piano, I whispered. She took your roses. She took your name and you let her. You let her because you were tired, because you were lonely, because you didn't know how to be a widower so you became a husband again. I don't forgive you, but I understand. I didn't visit again, not that grave, not ever, but Linda wasn't finished. I discovered it on the 10th anniversary of my mother's death. 10 years since the November afternoon when the music stopped. I drove to the cemetery with white roses. I'd found a bush, a cutting from a friend, grown in secret on my apartment balcony. I was going to plant it. I was going to restore something. The stone was different. I stopped walking. I stopped breathing. The world narrowed to a single point of wrongness. Asterisk Elena Vasquez, first wife of Robert, rest in peace. Asterisk that was all. Beloved mother, gone. Eternal in every note, gone. The music, the love, the life, reduced to a relational footnote. First wife. Not mother, not musician, not person, just a wife who came before, and beside it a new plaque. Bronze, shiny, freshly installed, asterisk reserved for Linda Morrison, beloved wife. Asterisk she'd bought the rights. A double-depth plot. She would be buried asterisk above asterisk my mother. Literally, for eternity. Her body resting on top of my mother's, her name the one on top, the one visible, the one that mattered. I touched the stone. My fingers came away dusty with fresh carving. They'd done this recently, while I was working, while I was living, while I was trying to become someone who didn't check locks 3 times or flinch at tulips. I looked at the dirt where the rose bush had been. Nothing, bare earth. Linda had removed it again, or it had died, or I had failed to keep something alive that needed more than my occasional attention. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked to my car and I drove 200 miles without stopping. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be in a world where your stepmother could lie on top of your dead mother and call it love. That was 3 years ago. I became invisible, not gone, present, but unseen. I finished law school, which I'd started before my father's death, funded by scholarships and loans, and the desperation of a woman who had nothing left to lose. I specialized in estate law, probate, property rights, the dark corners of the legal system where dead people's wishes are negotiated by the living. I learned about Linda's fraud, the signature on the grave alteration, mine, supposedly, consenting as surviving heir. It wasn't my signature. It wasn't even a good forgery. The funeral home that installed the new plaque had been paid in cash, no invoice, no records. The cemetery administration had lost the original paperwork for my mother's plot. I learned about Linda's life. Widow, wealthy, living in my father's house with her beige curtains and her orchids. Megan married to a politician, ambitious, handsome, destined for governor. Ashley working abroad, sending postcards Linda displayed on the mantle. The perfect family, the perfect narrative. I learned about Megan's secret, not through investigation, through patience, through becoming someone else. I joined a yoga studio near Megan's apartment. I became the woman who always smiled, who remembered birthdays, who listened without judging. For 18 months, I built a friendship with my stepsister, the good stepsister, the one who'd never been cruel to me, just oblivious, just absorbed in her own perfect life. I listened to her marriage problems, her husband's ambition, his family's obsession with reputation. They can't know, she told me once after wine in the dark corner of a cafe. About the baby, before David, I gave it up, closed adoption. But if they find out, if the press, his career, I held her hand. I said nothing, I just listened. I knew then what I had, not a weapon, a asterisk key asterisk. The key to Linda's perfect house, her perfect family, her perfect name on top of my mother's grave. I didn't use it, not yet. I waited. I became more patient, more invisible, more cold. The tea was my idea. I invited Linda to my apartment. She came surprised, suspicious, but unable to resist the narrative of reconciliation. The poor stepdaughter finally understanding, finally accepting her place. She looked around my apartment. Small, clean, no photos of her or my father or the beige house. Just my mother, a single framed picture, young, laughing at a piano, her hands raised in mid-gesture, caught in the act of teaching. Linda looked at it and looked away. "So," she said, settling into a chair with the ease of a woman who always expects comfort. "What did you want to talk about, Clara?" I served tea, chamomile, my mother's favorite. The smell filled the room and I saw Linda's nostril flare not with memory but with annoyance. "I wanted to show you something," I said. I opened a folder. Not legal documents. Photographs, the grave, the original stone, the new stone. The plaque with her name, waiting. Linda's face changed. The smile tightened. The eyes went flat. "I don't know what you think you're doing. I'm not doing anything," I said. "Yet, I just wanted you to know what I know, the forged signature, the cash payment to the funeral home, the cemetery's missing records, the fraud, Linda, the literal fraud." She stood. This is harassment. I'll call my lawyer." "Sit down," I said, not loudly, not angrily, just firmly, the way my mother would speak to a student who wasn't practicing. "I'm not finished." She sat, because I had something in my voice she'd never heard before. Certainty. The sound of a woman who has nothing to lose and everything to prove. I opened a second folder, not the grave fraud, the other thing, Megan's adoption records, the sealed file, the father's name, not her husband's, the clinic, the date. The proof that Megan Morrison, perfect wife of the future governor, had a secret child she'd abandoned. Linda's hand shook. The teacup rattled against the saucer. How did you?" "I didn't," I said. "Megan told me, over 18 months of friendship, of trust, of being the only person who listened without judging. She needed someone, Linda, you were too busy being perfect, so she found me." I leaned forward. "Here's what happens next. Nothing, I don't leak this, I don't tell David, I don't destroy Megan's life. In exchange, you sign these documents." I pushed the folder across the table. The transfer of grave rights, the removal of her plaque, the restoration of my mother's original inscription, and a letter already drafted, already reviewed by a lawyer from the funeral home, apologizing for the administrative error and offering compensation. "Compensation," Linda whispered. "A foundation. In my mother's name. For orphan girls who want to study music. Funded by an anonymous donor, you, Linda, tax deductible, good publicity, the kind of thing a governor's mother-in-law does." She looked at me, really looked. For the first time in 20 years she saw me, not the dramatic girl, not the bitter orphan, not the obstacle to her perfect family. She saw a woman who had learned to wait, to plan, to turn grief into geometry. "You planned this," she said, "for years." "I planned survival," I said. "This is just the shape it took." She signed every document, every line, her hand shaking, her perfect manicure chipped, her face gray with the understanding that she had lost. Not to force, not to law, to patience. To the kind of revenge that doesn't shout, it simply settles like dust until you can't breathe without inhaling it. But I wasn't done. The foundation was real. The Alina Vasquez Foundation for Musical Youth. I administered it myself, working pro bono, finding girls who needed pianos, teachers, hope. The first donation, Linda's anonymous contribution, paid for 10 Steinway uprights. 1962 models, honey-colored, the same year as my mother's. I found her piano eventually. Tracked it through 3 owners across 2 states to a family in Ohio who didn't know its history. I bought it back, not with Linda's money, with my own savings. Slowly accumulated, and I placed it in the foundation's main room. The bench with the carved names. The promise that I'd be better, the ghost of my mother's hands. I didn't tell Linda. That was the last cruelty, not telling her that her money had bought back what she sold, that her defeat had funded my mother's resurrection. The climax came at Megan's wedding. Not the first wedding that had happened quietly, small, before the scandal could emerge. But the public reception, the political event, the gathering of donors and press and power. Linda sat in the front row. Perfect in champagne silk, smiling for cameras, her name safe, her reputation intact. She'd paid for safety with my mother's grave. I sat in the last row, not invited, not welcome. Simply present. In a blue dress, my mother's favorite color. With a white rose brooch pinned to my collar, grown from the cutting on my balcony, the descendant of the bush she'd planted the day I was born. Megan saw me. During the vows, her eyes found me in the back. She smiled, confused, recognizing the yoga friend who'd disappeared months ago, not understanding why I was there, not yet connecting the dots. I raised my champagne glass. Not to her, not to David, to the empty seat beside me, to the mother who should have been there, who would have played piano at the reception, who would have taught Megan's future children for free, to the woman Linda tried to bury twice. Megan's smile faltered. She looked at Linda, then back at me. Something in her eyes, recognition, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. It didn't matter. The wedding continued. The photos were taken. The political machine rolled forward, but I was there. Visible, unvanished. Proof that some things cannot be erased, no matter how many beige curtains you hang, how many orchids you arrange, how many plaques you install. My mother died in November. Linda's plaque came down in March. The new stone was installed in June, white roses blooming around it, a bush I'd planted in secret at night with my own hands. Asterisk Elena Vasquez, beloved mother, eternal in every note. Asterisk and below, in smaller letters, I'd added myself. Asterisk and in every girl who plays piano for free, because some mothers never die. They only multiply. Asterisk I visit every Tuesday. I teach Sophie there on the foundation's lawn, weather permitting. She's getting better. Her fingers are learning what mine forgot. Sometimes she plays a piece my mother taught, passed down through students, through time, through the cracks in a world that tried to silence it. Linda lives in the same house. The beige curtains are still there, but I've heard, through Ashley's rare emails, through neighborhood gossip, that she can't look at them without remembering, that she sold the orchids, that she planted roses, white ones, that died within a month because she didn't know how to care for them. Megan's marriage ended anyway. Not because of me, because of David's ambition, because of politics, because of the distance between the person you pretend to be and the person you are. She has a daughter now. Sometimes I see her at the foundation, watching the lessons, her hand on her daughter's shoulder, her eyes finding mine with something like gratitude, or guilt, or the beginning of a question she hasn't learned to ask yet. Ashley moved to Portugal. She sends postcards of beaches and wine. I don't know if she knows. I don't know if she cares. My father remains in the black marble across town. I don't visit. But I know Linda does alone, aging, her perfect hair graying, her perfect teeth yellowing, her perfect life reduced to a stone that doesn't mention her real daughter, that doesn't mention me, that doesn't mention anything except a lie she told herself until it became truth. I don't forgive him. I don't forgive her. I don't forgive the world that made their cruelty possible, that called it redecorating, that told me to move on while they were still standing on my mother's grave. But I have learned something. Not healing, I don't believe in healing, not the way people mean it. But asterisk maintenance asterisk. The daily work of keeping something alive, the piano lessons, the rose bush, the foundation, the Tuesday visits, the refusal to disappear. I'm Clara, I'm 34 years old. I have a law degree I don't use for profit, a piano I play badly but faithfully, and a white rose bush that blooms every June, stubborn and fragrant and utterly indifferent to the woman who tried to kill it. My stepmother took my mother's grave. I took her family's name and turned it into music for children who need it. I don't know if that's justice. I don't know if that's revenge. I know it's Tuesday, and I have a lesson to teach, and my mother's hands are moving through mine, through Sophie's, through every girl who sits at a piano and believes she can be better than all of us. See you in the next story.